everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to another fine Wednesday morning. Welcome to another coffee break chat. I'm your host, James Jackson, he, they pronouns, executive producer, Light Thief Productions. We've got a good show for you today. We will be, once again, without consummate professional Victor Fiorillo. Consummate news professional Victor Fiorillo was unable to join us this morning. He got his vaccinations, as you do. If you're a normal person, you go get vaccinated because, we all hate being sick during the winter, but instead of being sick during the winter, he got the combo vax flu, which is when you wake up not feeling great because you just had three foreign things enter your body, and your body goes, "What the heck?" So he got a few vaccines, and then woke up at 3 o'clock this morning and texted me immediately, "Hey, I'm not going to be on the show today. Not feeling so great." So feel better, Victor. I'm sorry you're not feeling great. I understand entirely. And we hope you feel better. And come on the show soon. We don't have a guest next week. So I know my associate producer has been working on a guest next week. Maybe you can come on next week. I don't know. We're also winding down for the season. We're probably going to wind down either this will be the last show or next week will be the last show. And we'll have a new season coming up in the new year. But we've been working on politics this whole entire fall. We've been working on getting Philadelphians somebody who information on somebody who they can trust to lead them in the mayor's office, work for them in the city council, etc., etc. And we're going to talk about those election results. The election happened yesterday. We're going to talk about those election results today, and get current with it. We've got Rick Lewis coming on. He's a political activist and politician from New Jersey, and also very active in Philadelphia. And what this week's talk, Philadelphia election. What do we have here? Oh, you again. I mean, because really. We're going to talk Biden and war. It's interesting what's been happening with the national politics and election politics and Biden and the war in Israel and Palestine. We're going to talk Stop Cop City and RICO. The RICO charges against the Cop City protesters, which is quite an interesting and fascinating tale. If you want to see how your government can be used against you and are looking for a local example, look no further than the fine state of Georgia, folks. Philadelphia Department of the Arts. There was a recent ask about a Philadelphia Department of the Arts because of one of the mayoral candidates' platforms. And the Northeast Corridor investment, the federal investment into the Northeast Rail Corridor. We'll talk about that. But first, let's just bring on Rick. Let me get rid of that chat overlay. And good morning, Rick. Welcome to the show. Welcome to another fine Wednesday morning. Please introduce yourself, your pronouns, what it is you do.
Good morning, Rick Lewis. I am he, him. I'm a theater professional, artist activist, general troublemaker, and a big mouth who likes to try to make the world a little bit better than it was yesterday.
Yeah, I feel like I know a lot of us folks. I feel like we're the normal folks. Like we call her like like we get called out a lot, but I think most folks actually want to try and make the world better, a little bit better than it was yesterday.
Maybe I think everybody wants the world better than it was yesterday. Um, I think not enough people realize that they are able to make an impact. And so I don't know that people try.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. I want to go to. I'm just pulling up the city uh vote.pa. I think it's vote.pa.gov/Phila. I'm looking for it. The city election results, but um the election results are somewhat surprising from the top when you look at the number of voters who turned out. Let me pull it up on my phone because I know I have it there. Um, the turnout was slightly above 25%, which isn't a lot. And troubling. I know that we vote.phila.gov/results. That's it. Um, and if Meg could post that to the chats, that would be great. And yeah, I'm having trouble getting to it myself. Anyway, the yeah, okay, here we go. Voter turnout, divisions reporting, we had 96% of divisions total reporting. We have about 150 divisions that haven't reported yet. This is relatively unchanged since last night at like 10 o'clock when I last took a look. It was at 95%. Um, but total ballots cast 294,342. It's 28.49, so 29% of the total registered voters. Um that's a little low. No?
Well, eh, considering considering what the fight was, not really. Um, so everybody knows it's like in the 90s when the 49ers and the Cowboys would play each other in the playoffs. Everybody knew that that was the Super Bowl, not the actual Super Bowl. So it's the same kind of thing. Like the fight was between Sherelle Parker and Gim and like the Democratic primary.
But that
So
wasn't even a fight.
true, true. See, well, so in the whole in going back to the whole people try or don't try thing. So none of the other candidates tried to really make a dent in the black vote. Sherelle kind of got the black vote sort of out of hand. Um, Nobody realized that coalescing that one group would be enough to overshadow all of the other groups. So there was a lot of fighting going on, but none of none of the battles that were happening were the actual war, which is how we wound up with Sherelle Parker. And I say we, not that I haven't lived in Philly for like 20 years almost, but I am a Philadelphian who lives in New Jersey, and I'm very invested in what goes on over there. So anyway, all of that being said, um, the last Republican that came close to winning in Philly was Frank Rizzo, who wasn't really a Republican. I wish that Sam Katz had done better when he ran. But so there's not really been a Republican that's come close to City Hall in decades, generations almost. So considering that there wasn't like a real issue to drive people to the polls, 28%, actually a little better than I expected.
I mean,
But yes, it's low.
there were issues to drive people to the polls in that there were, there was kind of a somewhat statewide referendum on abortion access with the election, the Supreme Court election in this race. Um, there was something of a statewide referendum on the validity of, or a citywide referendum on the validity of a judgeship in a controversial judge being up for um, what you call it, up for keeping her office. I'm bringing up the mayor district map on the screen here. Um, just to emphasize your point about the black vote versus anything else. But yeah, just it's there were issues. They're just issues that don't get a lot of play, I suppose.
Right.
I mean, I know we concentrated on the issues in on this show somewhat, but I suppose we concentrated more on the mayor's race. How do we make it better? We were talking pre-show about this. How do we make it better? How do we make it so that the politics that gets expressed during an election are the politics that people care about? Like I literally on the show covered the topics week by week that voters found most important according to according to a survey, um, in reverse order. I went from the least important thing that on that list to the most important thing. How do we, if that's not the way, if that doesn't lead to discussing the topics that you can affect with your vote and drive voting, how do we do that? How do we drive more voting turnout?
Um, and I'm only pausing because I'm trying to. So I've got all of these ideas in my head about South Jersey, but that's not what we're talking about necessarily.
I mean,
Um,
I think it is. I mean, South Jersey isn't a unique animal in this case. I think that voter turnout is a problem pretty much everywhere, especially in off presidential elections.
but for instance, in Burlington County, the and I'll talk even more specifically about Medford Lakes, where I'm from. Um, the turnout was huge because of Board of Education races and Board of Education write-ins. And that happened in a lot of suburban areas because that's like the hot topic thing. And over in Jersey, with the whole state law now that schools can't out their kids
Hmm.
to parents, that drove a lot of conservatives, regressives is really what I call them, but that drove a lot of them insane. And so there were people who immediately wanted to get involved in school board races. So that sort of topic drove us to have a much greater turnout than normal. And like looking at the Philly thing, um, I I think your title of the "oh, it's you again" thing is accurate because there's not a lot about Philly politics that's going to change. And so while there are subjects and issues that might be important to people, they're not important to the Philadelphia political machine. Like, and that's everything from who the police commissioner is and how the police department actually functions to how is money allocated to districts and wards and communities to um, the backroom deals that developers get that wind up screwing over your average citizens. Like the political machine isn't responsive to
The actual issues that affect voters.
concerns,
Yeah.
right? And until, again, going back, I'm going to try to be careful about some of what I say, but like how any Black parent can be concerned with how police treat their children and still pull the lever for Sherelle Parker, like that's a disconnect I don't get.
You and me both. I don't.
Like it's like if you say that this is something that's important to you, and you know all of the all of what's going, like even with the guy who shot Eddie Irizarry, like going through all of that anger about the judge throwing that out and looking at the criminal justice system and saying we don't like this, we don't like how it treats our children, and we don't like what's going on, so let's elect someone who is very obviously into increasing police power, increasing patrol and occupy, and increasing the negative interactions that police have with our community. But that's exactly what the Black community did in Philly. That's exactly what happened. And that's not on you. Like I even look at like how well Alan Baum did in the primary compared to how much people dislike his practices as a developer. It's like when you look at what he did or what he does or how he's been doing business for the last few decades, it's like, how on earth does this person even start to plant a flag citywide? And it's because Philly politics does not equate to voter issues. So there needs to be a point where people stop voting the way their grandmother voted or voting the way, like that whole I'm going to vote for so and so because so and so else can't win. Like people need to stop playing the political game and really start voting their conscience and their beliefs and their issues, which isn't something that happens very often in Philly.
So I'm bringing up on screen the city council at large race because I think this speaks to your point. um, the Working Families Party, for however much, people always say, oh, they're just an extension of the Democratic Party, whatever. The people in who ran for Working Families Party seats, Kendra Brooks and Nicholas O'Rourke, both do often represent in their campaigns and in their public statements the issues that affect city voters directly, that affect people in the city directly. Um, and I would say that the Working Families Party being able to pull 6.95% and 5.83% of the total vote, um, when you could only vote for five people, um, is a pretty big win for them.
Sort of. Because really, they weren't running against the Philadelphia Democratic machine. They were running against the Philadelphia Republican machine, which is all but given up. Um, and so like them winning the two at large seats is no actual direct threat to any of the other actual district seats. So like it's cool and I'm glad. Um, I'm not I'm not sure how much they'll actually be able to move the needle.
Well, I mean, look at the top vote getter, Isaiah Thomas. I mean, he's been talking police reform. He's been talking. He, is constantly lambasted for his driving equality bill, which did pass into law. Making what was it, seven infractions the not be used as a primary stop reason. Um, Look at the second most vote getter, Catherine Gilmore Richardson. Uh, I would say that the things that pushed Catherine Gilmore Richardson and Isaiah Thomas into one and two are the same percentage of folks that voted for Kendra Brooks and Nicholas O'Rourke. Um, Same thing with like Jim Harity is the only like so if you look at the difference in percentage between Jim Harity and Isaiah Thomas, I think that's the percentage of voters who are progressive essentially. I don't have any other way of quantifying it. You know, if you looked at the voting ticket, you were either voting for five Democrats if you're just voting five straight straight Democratic ticket, or if you're somebody who likes to actually think about what they're doing in the voting booth, you might have pushed Working Families Party to vote Working Families Party people and pushed three other Democrat people. I don't think there's anybody who's pushing two Working Family Party people and pushing two Republicans. I could be wrong. Um,
But if you look at the stack, like there's a whole bunch of people who voted for five Democrats and didn't vote for either.
well, they can't, so you can only vote for five.
But so I'm saying so three of the five Democrats, or like there's some people who voted for the five Democrats and didn't vote for the Working Family Party or the Republican Party at all. There's some people obviously who would have voted for three of the Democrats and then more of the Working Families parties than
Republicans.
Republican parties. So I'm curious, and it's way too early in the day to do that much math. I'm curious as to how many people just picked the five Democrats and called it a day.
Well, so I think that's what I'm saying. I'm thinking if you look at Nicholas O'Rourke, which is 62,000 votes, and Kendra Brooks, which is 74,000, and you average them out and say 70,000, or 67,000 ish, you get the difference between Harity and Thomas. So you have Harity at 140,000, you have Isaiah Thomas at 177,000, and Catherine Gilmore Richardson at 170,000. So again, average them out, you're getting 175,000 ish. So 75,000 people, 60,000, 50,000. What is that? 40,000. So it's 30,000 people that didn't vote for you know Isaiah Thomas and Catherine Gilmore Richardson, but that didn't vote for Harity when they voted for Thomas and Catherine Gilmore Richardson. And let's say the 7,000 is easily made up by just people who don't know how to use the voting machine and hit only Isaiah Thomas and didn't hit the whole Democratic ticket for some reason. I don't know. The voting machines are super easy. I don't get it, but sure. Let's say that's the case. Um, I mean, I honestly, until you get to Ahmad and Landau, I don't understand how there's a difference between, the Democratic ticket members. I don't know who would be not picking Catherine Gilmore Richardson. If you can pick five, right? If you can pick any five of these, who's not picking Thomas and Catherine Gilmore Richardson at a minimum?
No, but I think if you look at the numbers, like of the five, I think Thomas and Richards, like if I were to try to picture it in my head, I think most people voted for Thomas Richardson and Ahmad.
Right.
And then it comes down to people who voted for Brooks and O'Rourke
Right.
and not
Not Ruin
Landau and Harry.
and Jim, yeah.
Like I think that's where Landau and Harity's numbers reduce. It's the people that went and voted for the Working Families Party.
Which, yeah,
Uh,
I'm agreeing with that. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that this speaks to what you're saying. It speaks to the desire of people to have politicians that speak to their. Rue Landau's campaign was never stellar. She's just attached to the GIM slash, um, like the progressive
mhm.
kind of campaigning that happened. So her name's been out there since the primary. Harity inherited his office. And I honestly would have rather see him get no votes than get the 140,000 he did. But 140,000 people voted for him, and I think those 140,000 people probably just hit Democratic ticket.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so
Um,
go ahead.
so part of the issue, and this is a weird tie-in. I was having a conversation with somebody earlier this morning, who was basically like, so with all of these Democratic wins and all of these things that are happening, when are people going to stop criticizing Joe Biden and kind of get in line, so that we don't reelect crazy? And I was like, look, just because people like just because Midwestern white women said, keep your hands off my uterus, doesn't mean that people actually like Joe Biden or his policies, or that his policies are actually hitting people in the pocket. Um, and it's like, don't get those things confused. And so I think when we look at this in the same kind of way, um, what will drive people is feeling like they're it's like the if people's concerns are being addressed and attacked and dealt with, it's a whole different mindset than, okay, I need to vote against whatever
Oh yeah, no,
ideology.
and I think that's always been the kind of one of the problems of the Democratic machine versus the Republican machine. I mean, this goes all the way back to like friggin' what's his name that lost the presidential because of the tank incident. Um,
Dukakis.
Dukakis. Yeah, this goes all the way back to Dukakis. I think if you look at Democrat politics versus Republican politics, Republican politics starting with Reagan and like the Tea Party. Um, no, I know Reagan and the Tea Party are two different things. I'm just
With
saying
you.
like
He
the,
planted the seeds, though, for
right,
sure.
that era is kind of where Republican politics went to, okay, we're going to now be the party of against everything. That is our place. That's what we do. We are the party you vote for if you are against whatever is going on. And I think that's been the politics of the Republican Party pretty much since then. At least in my estimation, I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. I will be wrong again. But this is what I see as Republican politics is, or at least the way they run campaigns is usually okay. You don't like, they try and pick up the disaffected, but it's the disaffected voters who have rose-colored glasses around what used to be. Um,
I, that carries a lot more weight than I think you give it. Because I don't think it's necessarily about being against everything. I think I call it a Rockwellian mythology. There's this idea of what America is supposed to be, and this mythology about what America was. And I think that there's so much, like, if you see America as baseball, apple pie, Star Spangled Banner, all of those very stereotypical things, as you see America becoming more brown, more queer, more diverse, more femme, it's easy to say what America is being attacked by what America is becoming. And so you can either engender the fear of what it's becoming, and that can be a drive, or you can use the false patriotism and that mythology as a positive to drive. So I think the Republican playbook has been this is what we think America is. So anything that is not what we think America is what we're going to oppose.
And
As
also,
opposed
and I think that's where, like, you get the latching on of evangelicals, etc. You get the you easily get the, okay, we've trained you since birth to be, this is what America is. And uh, for my viewers, I haven't always been a city guy. I grew up in the rural South. I don't let the accent out very often, but I grew up amongst these folks. I was called boy more times than you can shake a stick at. I have had guns pulled on me just because I'm brown. Don't get me wrong. I know what racism is. Um, I'm for white people, I'm not very recognizably black. For black folks, I seem to be very recognizably black. Almost everyone, every black folk that I run into is like, "Hey, what's up?"
you get the nod.
Yeah, I get the nod. I'm
There
like,
you go. That's how you know.
but yeah, no, it is how you know. I don't get it. Like white folks, white folk. I have a guy that I work with frequently, and he's like, "You're the whitest black person I've ever met." I'm like, okay. He's like, other white people look at you and they don't see a black guy. I'm like, great. I don't, like they did when I was a kid, but
Right.
okay, they don't see a black guy right now, but that's still how I grew up. At any rate, this whole you get amongst evangelicals, you get amongst Baptists and folks that are in this kind of rhetoric of, when I grew up in school, America the Beautiful. Like
Right.
there's nothing that America has ever done wrong for these
Right.
folks. And to call into question any past action as possibly being even a gray area is almost
It's
anathema
it
to,
it's sacrilege.
yeah.
It it's weird. Like people talk about, America and separation of church and state, blah 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 blah, which is cool. But when you think about it, all of our lives, you know, God bless America, glory, glory, hallelujah, His truth is marching on, in God we trust, yeah, yeah, one nation, like all of that, regardless of how it works its way out legislatively, like all of that has been drilled into the head of every American kid in every public school, like forever and ever and ever. Never mind shit like, you know, the Indians shared food with their new neighbors and slaves sang to make the workday seem more pleasant. Like
Yeah, and
all
and and some slaves were actually, gaining skills that they could later use.
right, right. And see what's weird, like when that came out, like I've done a bunch of research for a show that I'm writing. Um, and like that kind of, again, mythology, that's like decades old. Like I found textbooks from like the 40s and 50s,
Oh yeah,
that talk
yeah,
that very clearly, again, create this mythological America where, right, like we never did anything wrong. We were always doing the right thing. We were always the guys in the white hats to save everybody. And all of that happened because we love God. And so when there's that mindset of that's what America is and that's what America is supposed to be, well, if you believe that God doesn't like gay people, and then when gay people start having a voice and some power and some authority and some agency, then you look at the fabric of America being attacked. You see, um, you know, the right I say the biggest reason, aside from all the problems I have with Hillary, but the biggest reason that Trump was elected was because so much of America lost their shit at the mindset of having a black president. Not because there was anything necessarily wrong with Obama or wrong with his policies or wrong with his political career, but just because that's not what America is.
Right.
It's not how America works. And that panic about America being taken away and the America that they grew up believing. This is from everybody who like watched Howdy Doody and the Lone Ranger as a kid to their kids in the whole Reagan, G.I. Joe, Rambo era. Like that idea of what America is supposed to be now seems attacked and now is going away. Has made for the has led us to where we are now politically. So the right is trying very hard to regress back to what they thought we were. And then everyone that's not the right is either trying to fight a corporatist neo-lib power base that still is the Democratic Party, um, or they're independents who are kind of looking at both sides and going, yeah, this is great, but I'm still driving a pickup truck that kind of sucks. My wages are too low. And if I don't have this job, my family doesn't have health insurance.
So I want to bring up something that was posted in the comments. I didn't catch it when it was posted in the comments, but it's valuable. There's lots of coverage on the ground of things going on election days, and to be perfectly blunt, I had a migraine yesterday and couldn't keep up with all the election day coverage. But so one of my Facebook friends, Stan, is commenting as we talk, just about I said that there are lots of folks that say the Working Families Party is just a secondary offshoot of the Democratic Party. I don't say that to be accurate. Stan was like, that's very wrong. I'm not saying that because it's accurate. I'm saying that because that's what people say. Um, not and uh, he rightfully points out that the Working Families Party was opposed by both Bob Brady and Sherelle Parker. Um, Both openly opposed Pastor Nick and Kendra Brooks. That they were more of a barrier than Drew Murray and Jim Hasher. I agree with all that. I agree that the Working Families Party folks are of a different set of politics than the Democratic machine. I just think that when you look at the election results, that they say that Working Families Party's members are speaking to the voters and speaking to their concerns more than the Democratic machine is. Um, I think also when you look at the votes, that unfortunately also says that only about I can't even do the math. What percentage is like, it's like 60,000 voters out of the 1 million that showed up. So 1.2 million that showed up. So it's 0.5% of the voters that, realize that. That's very disheartening for me. I mean,
Be grateful that half of 1% actually are paying that kind of attention. But yeah, it
or that's a 0.5% of total voters. 300,000 showed up. We had a difference of, let's say, 70, 60, 50, 40, 30, 30,000. We had a difference of 30,000. So let's say out of 300,000, 30,000, that's what, 1%, divided by
There-
300,000.
Yeah, yeah.
So 1%. Okay, so more than half a percent. Half a percent of the total registered voters, 1% of the people that bothered to show up. If you want to do it as, like, that's a pretty impressive show up rate for progressives, then. If you want to say that, like, all the people that voted for O'Rourke and Brooks and Thomas and Richardson and Ahmad versus the people that just voted straight Democratic ticket with Harity are, progressives. That's a pretty impressive show up rate. Still, because you had in this mathing, I may be wrong. In this mathing that I'm doing in my head really quickly, um, you have half a percent of total voters. They were 1% of the results. That's, you're 2 to 1 showing up as progressives versus the Democratic machine voters. That's relatively good. That's a really relatively good show up rate. It's not enough. Um,
The I'm I'm so I'm gonna use Jersey politics for a second.
mm,
Um, there are a lot of people out here who consider themselves progressives when it comes to social issues. And they will have arguments and they will fly the flags outside of their house and they will stand up and consider themselves allies. Um, but at the same time are, huge Biden flag wavers. They consider Trump the problem as
right,
opposed to a symptom of the problem. And so while they will identify as being progressive, in reality, they're, just left of center. Um, and I think in a lot of ways, Billy is that like I think there are a lot of progressives in Germantown and Mount Airy. I think there's a lot of progressives in like the Graduate Hospital area, Center City, Rittenhouse Square, Graduate Hospital, like around there. Um,
think there's a lot of progressives in South Philly. I think that the interesting thing about South Philly is that it's pretty much split with between what you call regressives, and I agree with your terminology there, versus progressives. Um, I think there's kind of an even split when you look at it that way in South Philly. And not to beat a dead horse, so to speak, but you go back to the map of mayoral results, and I don't know that I want to, you know I think if you look at, for instance, the 26th, the 45th, they're always going to be, um, whatever the crime and punishment or GOP folks are. Um, I
here's a question.
yeah,
Here's a question. Um, in yesterday's election, who are progressives going to vote for?
that's a good question. I don't know. And I have a lot of progressive friends. Um, I my my own vote guidance was vote for O. I mean, you're not gonna win, but at the same time, you're making a statement on what kind of policy you want to see, or vote for Parker and then actually show up, knock on her door, set meetings with her, call her on the phone, send her emails. Um,
And now we're getting back to the how much do people actually want to participate in change? Because looking at that, all right. So I full disclosure, most of my perception of David O comes from people that I've dealt with who have been involved in like Chinatown. And so like I haven't done nearly enough research on him to have a position on his policies. Full disclosure. And like when I saw him running for mayor, I was like, oh, that's cute. That's sweet. Not not because of anything personal against him or his policies, but just understanding the way Philly works. Again, I think that the reality that Rizzo, who wasn't only ran as a Republican because he couldn't run as a Democrat, like, and because in Philly at the time, him being Frank Rizzo meant a lot more than him being a Republican. Um, and again, like Sam Katz was the last worthwhile Republican to run, in my opinion.
mhm.
So when David O said he was running, I was like, okay, well, somebody's got to run. Like somebody's got to run as a Republican, but why? Because it won't matter. Um, so where was I going with it?
Stan also said that several progressives he know wrote in Helen Gim or just left the mayoral spot blank. I had reports from some of my friends that and these are anecdotal reports. I have no idea of actual, I don't have the budget to have poll watchers on the ground or anything like that. I would love to. Plug for my Patreon, you want to give me, you want to give a
Hey,
local independent enough budget to send out, 25, 30 people on election day to poll,
conduct exit polls.
conduct some polls, then subscribe to my Patreon. I doubt you're going to. Um, but if you want to, I will, like if you subscribe to my Patreon or send a Cash App or whatever you want to do and say this is specifically for poll coverage, I will dedicate any money anybody sends my way to specifically poll coverage if they want it. Um at any rate, um Meg just dropped in the link in the comments. Thank you, Meg. But yeah, the thing is, not like people were saying, oh, I'm gonna write in um Rebecca Reinhart. I'm gonna write in Helen Gim. I'm gonna well. First of all, folks, organize behind one friggin' candidate. If you're going to have a progressive candidate, organize around one or get them to talk and promise each other some sort of office. Because if the progressives had organized, they had 44% of the primary vote between Gim and Reinhardt. Please fucking organize. Don't infight. Don't let national Dems infiltrate campaigns that have no opportunity of winning. Gim had no opportunity to win. None. She had no opportunity to win. She is not a popular person in Philly politics. She's pissed off more people than I have. Anyway.
So here's the thing though about what you just said. You said organize behind a person, and then you're like, but not this person.
I know. I took a moment to get
Yeah, yeah.
To be honest, if the negotiations had been Reihart gets promised managing director and Gim is mayor, I would have voted for Gim for mayor.
Right.
I
Um,
mean, like I still organize. I don't. At the end of the day, the people in office aren't the ones doing shit. They're not. Like you can look at any mayorship, and it's a leadership position. It's
yeah,
a
they're coaches, not players.
right. So vote for whoever you want for mayor, but make sure the team behind them is a good team. The problem that Gim had is that she had a bunch of bigwig national politics people jump on her campaign late in the day, and they forgot that black people existed, as they usually do. And the problem that Reihart had was that she had no money and didn't have a good campaign manager. Um, Even though she is relatively popular in Philly politics and could have won the machine vote, she didn't. Her manager didn't pay attention enough to the machine.
I mean, and which is hard to say when Nutter and Street both campaigned for her actively.
Yes,
That that's 40 years of Philadelphia machine.
right, but it isn't the machine that's active now.
Correct. Correct. And I think, see, it's very funny. I think there was a little bit of Hillary level hubris with Reinhardt, and I know that you and I disagree on Reinhardt versus Gim, and at this point, it's irrelevant. Um, I think that there were certain levels of, well, of course she's going to win.
In what, in the Reihart campaign?
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, a, a, because she's been, and it's weird. It's like because she's been part of the machine, and because she's actually been a relatively successful part of the machine, and then because like the machine
Endorsed her.
endorsed her far more than any, in fact, more than everybody else combined. Um, but the city hall machine is different than, or the mayor's office machine is different than the city council machine, is different than the community machines.
Yes, but also I think that overall, Parker has a lock on the community machine. She has the ward leaders. She always had the ward leaders. She
Mm-hmm.
has the and to not put up a fight, to not both Gim and Reinhardt suffered from not putting up a fight in that area. Like she did, neither one of them really took advantage of the existing local machine where you go to the churches, you go to the little old ladies that tell everybody how to vote, and you make sure that the block captains and the ward leaders know who you are and know that you're going to address their concerns.
How could either of them make those inroads?
I think Reihart had the opportunity to make those inroads. I don't think she did. I think that her campaign put her in photo ops late in the game to try and start making those inroads, and utterly failed to pay any attention to those inroads in the beginning of the campaign, um, which was the time to make those inroads.
If Rebecca Reinhardt goes to Bright Host Baptist Church
Mm-hmm.
or Deliverance Evangelistic Church on Lehigh Avenue
Right.
on one Sunday, but then Sherelle Parker goes the next Sunday, like who wins that battle?
Depends what they say. I think.
No,
I
no, it
think.
doesn't.
I think it depends what they say at that point.
No, because and this kind of goes again. We keep touching this back. Um, Rebecca Reinhardt, for all of her plans, isn't going to say the things that resonate with those hat wearing church ladies who tell everybody how to vote.
Okay, fair. I
Um,
agree.
and and so it's weird. Like
Do you
people good.
do you think that O said the things that resonated with the hat wearing church ladies, even though he didn't have much of an inroad into that community?
I don't. I unfortunately I don't think it mattered what O said. Parts and let's just put it out there. Um, uh, an Asian businessman Republican. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what he says, and it especially doesn't matter what he says if what he's saying is opposed to what a black woman from the community is saying.
Okay.
And I'm not saying that's right. Like a friend of mine posted yesterday. She was very happy that Philadelphia finally elected a black woman, and I'm like, yeah, for me, it's like Harris. Like I'm glad that it's a woman. I'm glad that it's a black woman. I really wish it was not this black woman.
Right, because she's not. Somebody compare. Somebody. One of the reporters. One of the Inquirer reporters compared her to New York's mayor, and I think that's the most apt comparison. These folks are not. They're not Democrats. And okay, all right, there's a huge portion of the black vote that isn't actually aligned with Democrat values. Great,
Right.
understood. You're aligned with the folks that are law and order. You're aligned with the church. You're aligned with your pastor. You're aligned with this kind of rose colored glasses version of the 60s, 70s, and 80s where black people had freedom, and there wasn't like massive crackdowns on crime, and like your community wasn't losing uh 50 to 75% of its manpower and money to the war on drugs. And anyway, I'm
It's
about to
the
go off on
it,
another rant.
it's the Huxtable slash um West Mount Airy
Right.
paradox.
Yeah, it is the Huxtables. It's this version of blackness that existed in sitcoms, but I don't think it actually existed anywhere in the world.
Oh
Um,
no. It exists. I no. Like Mount Airy, like off of like Stanton and Green. No, it absolutely existed, and that became the pinnacle. That became the goal. That became the moving on up.
the Jeffersons, yes.
Yeah, and so
The problem is it was such a small percentage, and it's so much lower than the white ideal.
mythology. I'm gonna keep coming because so much of what drives people is not what's actually happening. It's not what's actually going on. It's what they believe is the goal. It's what they believe, because you look at people, even black people who are like, yeah, I hope we turn our clocks back to when, people had respect and people, looked up to each other. Or who was it? There was somebody posted an article. Oh, I can't remember who it was. But it was a black educator who was talking about how joined and supportive and solid the black community was in the 50s and the 60s.
It was
And
not.
and they were right, but they were hearkening back to the kind of unity that existed, but it only existed because everybody was oppressed. And
Right.
so it existed on a surface level, but like completely
It
ignoring.
existed by shared experience, not
Right,
not by unity. It
right,
didn't exist because you had people like Dr. King fighting with people like, Malcolm X, you had these huge divisions between progressive politics and peace politics and even folks that were like they're and I don't know what else to term folks like this, but you had the house Negroes who were like, oh, we should go back to slavery, we're not ready for this. um you had those divisions in the 50s and 60s, and they were huge, and the only unity was around the shared experience that all black folks were considered not equal citizens.
Right, regardless of how radical or peace loving you were. Right.
Right.
And so that like that mythology though, that hearkening back to, well, I remember when the streets were safe. The streets were never safe. Um, but there's that hearkening back to that, and that belief that that's what was, and that's what could be, and that's what should be. Like that's the kind of thing that gets a Sherelle Parker elected. That's the kind of thing that makes it so that when she goes out and she gives her message, despite the fact that she wants to again increase patrol and occupy, the fact that she's all but said, well, stop and frisk isn't all that bad, um, all of those sorts of things, um, because people want to think about being able to send their kid to the corner store to get cigarettes like they used to in the 70s and not have to worry about it being a problem and not have to worry about like safety or whatever. Um, that's the kind of thing that where it so it doesn't, that's what makes it not matter what David O says. That's what makes it not matter what Rebecca Reinhart says. And
So
it
I wanna just talk about this retention vote real quick, and I want to point out that it kind of supports rough math around what we've been talking about. So up on the screen, I have Anne Marie B. Cole. She's the judge who is relatively controversial. She was not recommended for retention by the Philadelphia Bar. She's made a couple of controversial decisions, including the decision that led to the destruction of the Painted Bride mural. Um, and just looking at her results, about 80,000 people voted against her retention, and she was retained. Never, what I was, Stan commented earlier when I was talking about the retention vote, that retention votes rarely see judges removed from office. In fact, in my research, I think I'm pretty sure retention votes have never removed a judge from office in Pennsylvania. And then so looking at the fact that she was 41% versus 59% is relatively impressive, and also that 80,000 people voted against her retention. And then if you just look at the next person, which is Giovanni O'Campbell. Court of Common Pleas retention, only 46,000, so 40-ish thousand people voted against his retention. You look at Jacqueline F. Allen, same thing, 40-ish thousand voted against retention. And then if you go to Superior Court, the numbers are bigger because of just how the voting system worked. But all of the common pleas, court retentions, most people got 40,000 retention votes, and only Coyle received 80,000. So that's, like 40-ish thousand people who were paying enough attention to hit the no button next to her name. Um, how do we turn that 40-ish thousand people into something effective? How do we turn that 40-ish thousand people in from 20% of the vote to from 20% of the 30% of people who voted into 50% of the registered voters.
Um, I think we need to start a media company.
I,
Serious.
I think you both have media companies, though.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, we have production companies. It's a little bit different. Because so when you think about decisions that so there's a whole lot of people who have very emotional and sentimental attachment, say to the Painted Bride decision.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but at the end of the day, most people don't understand how that might have any actual impact on the way they live their lives. Because the connection of legacy art, um, art installations, art funding, um, tourist, all none of those things do people see as connecting to their average everyday life.
And they do. Let's make that clear.
Right.
They friggin' do.
They absolutely do.
It's kind of
But
like the whole point of this show is like that artists connect to every piece of current events that exist, and like we need to pay more attention. But anyway, go on.
but that's what I'm saying. So most people, like, if you ask most people, what's the jurisdiction of the Court of Common Pleas? You're not going to get an answer. So not understanding how it's even kind of like one of the reasons that, like, um midterm elections, the turnout is so low. Like, people don't understand, like, who's in the legislature matter, who's in your state legislature has a lot more effect on your actual life than who's in the White House. But people don't get that. And so I think starting to educate people um on how the dots connect is how you start getting people to actively participate. Again, I'm going to come back to yesterday's elections in Medford Lake specifically, but it also a South Jersey thing. There were a lot of elections that had to do with school boards, and a lot of the school board elections had write-ins. In fact, most of the increase in turnout in Medford Lakes is because um, parents are flipping out because Jersey says you can't out your children. Like, schools can't out children to their parents. So there's a whole bunch of people who are like, we want parental transparency, is what they call it. And gender neutral bathrooms are also a big thing. So because people have their very specific opinions about those topics, that drives what they pay attention to. School board elections, up for the past 4 years that I've been doing local politics, um, even on elections where you have 60% turnout, you know, 18% wind up voting for school board. This time, and I haven't seen the actual numbers, but just from experience and talking to poll workers, um, I think probably I think we're probably about 65, maybe even 70% participation yesterday. Almost all of that increase was driven by the school board activity. So I think when it comes to things like in Philadelphia, and getting people to understand how all of those low down ballot, lower races, judgeships, and again, like, people talk about the criminal justice system in Philly and police in Philly, but then they don't vote when it comes to things like judges.
Right.
So
But
understanding.
by the way, the thing that caused Cole to not receive the bar association's endorsement is that she was the judge that point blank refused any COVID releases at the beginning of the pandemic. just rubber stamp no on every request, a case that came across her desk for a request for a release because of the COVID outbreak in Philadelphia prisons.
Right. But how many people know that?
Everybody should know that. I mean, it was a big deal.
Right. Well, again, should and do. And that's why I said the thing. That's why I said the thing about the media company. Because there there was a point in time in American journalism where like American journalism has always fed what people are allowed to be fed. And this idea that, before Reagan, um, that news was objective and just the facts is complete bullshit.
Oh
But
no, yeah, no, it wasn't. It was just there were rules.
and right, there were rules, and part of the rules were, um, and now a dissenting opinion, and then it would be like the little dry blurred PSA shot in a concrete room bubble, but at least the information was there. And now, like, I know so many people who are incapable of, and I don't say that insultingly, but they are unable to navigate the morass of informational bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
So things that matter get lost behind things that matter less or things that are more sensational.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why, there when there are certain issues, it's weird. I'm gonna try to stay on topic, but I'm wavering a little bit. My biggest worry about the 2024 presidential election is complete burnout and lack of investment on people's parts.
And I think we're getting there really quickly. I want to recognize the time. It's 11:15. I do have to get going soon, and also I wanted to just cover the things that we didn't cover. We've spent a lot of time on the Philadelphia election, and this is as good a segue as any. The 2024 presidential is going to be a lot about. It's going to be Biden versus Trump again. I can't believe that. First of all, I don't know.
I have certain hopes, but
I have hopes.
I don't think I should say them out loud.
No, whatever we say that isn't a Biden Trump picture right now is going to turn out to not be true. The one thing that you can count on is at minimum it's going to be Biden versus Trump. If it's not Biden versus Trump, it's going to be a Biden versus Trump stand-in. Um, and the problem is just like
Joe's really old.
yeah,
That's
the
all I'm
problem
gonna say.
the problem, well, also the problem with Joe being really old is if it's not Biden versus Trump or Biden versus Trump stand, it's gonna be Harris versus Trump or Harris versus Trump stand-in, and that's not a winnable race. Anyway, but because it's not winnable because you have an administration that A isn't doing what it said it would do, B isn't doing any of the things that the quote unquote base are asking them to do, isn't even
Right.
approaching the issues from the base's angle, like isn't even like, like going, oh, these folks, they voted for us a lot. Maybe we should look at things from their perspective, and we can, like, that's what a good administration does. It goes, okay, so this is your perspective. I'm going to adopt that perspective for a second, and then I'm going to veer off to wherever the people who give me money want me to go. But you got to
Yeah,
stop.
they just skip the perspective.
Right, right.
Right. I
Um,
t- I
that's
show people. Oh, go ahead.
that's
Sorry.
how you get voter burnout, though. That's how you get 26% voter turnout of a major city in a mayoral election.
Yep. And they don't. And So the best thing for the Democratic machine, for the neo-lib machine to ever happen was Trump.
Oh
Because,
yeah, no, it kept them in power for at least another decade.
right, like a whole lot of bullshit got overlooked because they could go, see, here's Trump.
He's
And
worse.
right, right. And it's kind of like so if Trump isn't able to run, because that's the only thing that will stop him from winning the Republican nomination.
Right.
But if for some reason he's unable to run, it then gets scary because Ramaswamy, and I say Swamy on purpose, um, isn't like he's the most Trumpian. He's not going to get a nomination. I think it's either going to be DeSantis or Haley.
Mm.
Um, both of whom are more wicked than Trump and smarter than Trump.
But they're also both
But they're
worse
also more
at.
palatable.
Yeah, but they're also worse, both worse in likability and relatability.
Yeah, but see, again, ultimately, the people that wind up, and this is so you heard it here. The presidential, the 2024 presidential election is probably going to have about I'd say a 35 to 40% turnout. That's that's
That's being generous. I think
that's my prediction.
I'm gonna go down like the 30s, maybe breaking down into the 20s. But yeah, go on.
So the whoever winds up the Republican nomination, the people that are voting for him are again voting
They're voting social issues.
right, right. They're voting social issues and they are voting to retain what they think America ought to be. And then on the Democratic side, there hasn't been enough, except for the real Biden loyalists or anti-Trumpists, there hasn't been enough to inspire them to actually show up. I have this argument all the time. I take a page from Biden's 2020 campaign website of things that he promised to enact. And I think there's like 23 things on the page, and the only one that's actually happened is rejoining the Paris Accord.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of you look at it and you're like, which of these things has he actually accomplished? Which of these things has he tried to
Yeah, no,
accomplish?
it's the tried. It's the tried that bothers me.
Right. I'm like, if so, because people say, well, the Republicans are standing in the way of everything, and the Republicans are blocking
Yeah,
it. I'm
great.
like, okay, well, which of this shit has come off his desk?
Right. Or even like entered his mouth. Like,
Right.
you do State of the Unions all the time. You talk to legislators all the time. Frickin' lead. You made these promises. Get them off the table. Get them in somebody else's, get people talking about them. If you're at least talking about them, even and here's the normal neo-lib tactic which would work and would be great. They always put things up that they know are going to fail and are just there to drive voters. That's great. I don't care. At least it's in the conversation.
Right.
That's you used to be able to count on neolibs to do that. You can't count on them to do that anymore.
At least tell me good lies.
Right. At least give me a handy while you're taking money out of my pocket.
Right. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Nope.
and that's the whole Biden versus war thing, Biden and war. Like you're looking at the numbers on the wall, and you're finally getting your advisors are telling you, "Hey, Joe, um, you know, this doesn't look great," and you keep telling people that you can't do anything, and they're looking at the history of it and going, "You're bullshitting because you're bullshitting."
Right.
You could tell BB whatever the fuck you want and have in the past, and there's transcripts of it, and here's the transcript. Tell him. And he's going, I don't know.
right. And say one thing to BB and then send him two aircraft carriers,
Right.
or say that we can't afford like to even think about Medicare for all. Yet he wants to send $100 billion to Ukraine and Israel, both of whom have universal health care.
Right.
And like and even independents are looking and going, wait a second.
Right.
Like I don't yeah.
I mean, not that Trump is going to get any of these things done, but I don't know if this is a lesson that the voters have taught the elected officials or something. But now they just go, I don't have to try.
Correct. Well, because again, so the regressives um are regressives are stoked because Roe is overturned.
Yeah.
Regressives are stoked because they've got the Supreme Court stacked.
Yeah.
Regressives are stoked because in a lot of ways they're taking over state legislatures. Like that's their game.
Yeah.
And so they're going to do what they're going to do.
And they have the
People,
House, regardless of however, because if you have state legislatures, you have the House. You've successfully gerrymandered the situation into people into district elections being in your favor.
right. On the left side of the aisle, there's still enough. Like, there's not enough people who go, wait a minute. We held our noses. We held our noses a lot, and Roe was still overturned.
Right.
We held our noses a lot, and we still have, the biggest military budget in the history of the planet. We held our noses a lot, and you still have places being devastated by natural disasters. And we're talking about trying to avoid climate change, but we're not really doing the things that we can be doing. Um, there's still there still are too many people who are scared of the Republican boogeyman. Um, so scared of it that they're not angry enough at our side for doing the things that they said that they would do and doing the things that we want them to do. Um,
I posted a picture yesterday. You know how I posted a picture where I unwrapped a left and a right Twix and then left them next to each other because that's what elections are anymore. It seems like. But yeah, I mean, and this goes into Stop Cop City and RICO. The protest there have been a lot of peaceful protests, and they are very peaceful protests against Cop City in Atlanta. In a suburb of Atlanta, they're building a training facility on a huge amount of acreage. And it's basically going to be a miniature version of a city, essentially what you would build for a military training facility to replicate an urban environment for people to, do live fire exercises and walk through. Um, and there's protesters, who are saying, A, it's not environmental to destroy all this natural acreage. B, it's not what we want our money spent on as taxpayers. And C, it goes counter to everything that everybody has been asking for in regards to district attorneys and state used RICO charges against the protesters.
the the question becomes, you know, again, what's the objective? Um, you know, Biden and Harris talked a lot about police and criminal justice reform. And then Biden signs a bill that gave police
Is saddled with a lot of stuff that they can't use.
right. So, which, somebody said, I saw a post, he said, you don't have to go to war just because Raytheon tells you to.
Yeah, you do actually.
Well, right. Exactly.
Because
Um,
Raytheon will start the war with or without you. There's enough private armies in the world that they will make sure it happens. But anyway,
so, um, like going after Trump, is he a criminal? Sure, he's been a criminal for a long time. Yay, great, fantastic, fine, dandy. Put him in jail. I don't care. Um, it's not going to it's not going to stop or even address white male Protestant supremacy in America and all that fuels and all of that socially, economically, politically, religiously, all like symptom, not sickness.
I,
And so,
I would like to point out that while we're busting Trump, and this isn't a whataboutism. This is a we should do this more often thing. Elon Musk has a history of committing the same crimes that Trump is up for under RICO. Um, just like I was putting it all together in a post in response to somebody was complaining about the rate of depreciation for Teslas. So they depreciated about $2,000 a month. Um, Fine, and but the thing is, like Elon Musk has been and was for several years touting that Tesla was going to be the first car that appreciates in value after you buy it, because we're gonna have everybody who owns a Tesla is going to be able to enroll it in a self-driving taxi program, and you'll be able to make money from your couch with your car out there making money for you. Um,
you're gonna get so tired of winning with this
Right,
Tesla.
you're gonna get it's the same guy. It's the same guy
Mhm.
except for like he's actually rich instead of not actually rich, and also he's better at scamming the government for money than Trump ever was. But yeah, he has a history of judgments against him and is continuing to commit crimes. I'm trying to find the list here. Essentially, he was found guilty of violating SEC rules because of his tweets and talk show appearances, pumping the value of Tesla, but immediately before he dumped a bunch of Tesla stock unannounced. And then when the SEC found that he had violated trading laws, he didn't really stop doing any of the things that they found him guilty of. He paid a $40 million fine, and agreed to have all his tweets reviewed before he posted them, but immediately asked that part of the judgment be vacated. It wasn't vacated, but he still doesn't really seem to push his tweets past anybody who knows to tell him not to tweet that. um, and then he just for funsies, I gotta find this list. Just for funsies, he bought Twitter stock before he announced that he was going to try and acquire Twitter. And then he passed. There's a limit. You have to, if you acquire more than 5% of a company, you have to announce it in publicly, and then also notify the SEC that you're what your intents are. Like essentially, like
Mhm.
I'm gonna stop at 20%, or I'm trying to take over the company. Um, and he didn't announce that, and the delay in the announcement was something like 11 days, which allowed him to buy enough more stock that he made I think 1.5 billion on the extra stock he bought at $30, which appreciated to $50 immediately after an announcement. And so he paid like 40 million on that, which means he really didn't pay anything. He still made money. And then they're looking into the fact that his brother, who's on the board of Twitter, or who's on the board of Tesla, dumped around 1.5 billion in stock of Tesla right before Elon posted a poll on Twitter as to whether or not he should dump the stock of Tesla, so decreasing its value as soon as he posted that poll. So that's insider trading, folks, in case you're trying to keep up. And then all the other stuff that he does, including like getting grants from the government to do X, Y, and Z, and then not doing it. But yeah, so like we don't actually prosecute people for these crimes unless it's politically expedient, which
Right.
unfortunately gives a lot of weight to the folks that are like, oh, we're just politically prosecuting Trump. Um,
Like,
sure.
right. Like Trump is a criminal. He's been a criminal for a long time. Now he's a criminal with political, therefore legislative, therefore economic power that he never had before.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the whole that looking at the other side, talking about the RICO charges against Cop City protesters, it's the same kind of thing. Like when you get to a point where people are making enough of an argument as to why are we spending this on, you know, on building a police military base, blah, 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 when XYZ is going on and when we have XYZ needs and all those sorts of things. Like as that starts to get traction, it's like, I don't even think they're trying to stop the protest, but I think they're definitely trying to wrangle the protests to suffocate them a little bit. So it
A little bit.
becomes
There's a little bit.
right, just a little
A
bit.
little bit.
So it becomes the same kind of thing where it all comes down to who you're pissing off, which palms are being greased and which aren't. Um, it's weird. It's really easy, particularly after like a talk like we've had today, to just be ultimately cynical.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm still a believer. Like I look at my life and I'm like, okay, it's much cooler being a black man in America now than it was 100
Sure.
years ago. It was 200 years ago.
Sure.
I believe ultimately that the arc of humanity trends upward. I also believe that most of the insanity that we're seeing right now is white male Protestant supremacy kicking and screaming and fighting for its life. But I also don't believe that it's gotten as bad as it's going to get before it begins getting really, really better. Um, and I think that part of that, those death throes that we're seeing, is a greater coalescence of progressive thought across racial, even across economic, across social backgrounds. So more people are coming together on that end. And then the people that are opposed to that kind of change and that kind of growth also coalescing, be it Sherelle Parker and the church ladies who think the gays are evil because the Bible says so. And one of the weirdest things for me, and this is too much to get into because I don't know how much time we have, but the whole, like, I have friends who are Jewish who I consider to be super, super progressive in general, that on this Israel-Palestine thing are siding with people that I know are Trump-loving, gun-loving, generally anti-Semitic people in their attitudes and postures. But this Israel thing, like, it's weird seeing the groups that are coming together on the right or conservative or regressive side of things. Um, so I feel like we're in for another 8 to 10 years of holy fuck before things kind of start to
Take a step forward again.
right. And the sad thing about that is a lot of that step forward has to depends on our resilience and depends on our willingness to like forge through, because I know a lot of people who are more moderate don't have the stones to keep pushing and don't have the courage of their convictions, as it were, when it comes to what they say they believe. Is that whole thing. If you say you're an ally, but you're not standing close enough to get hit by the rocks,
Mm.
you might want to check
Your
your
allyship.
and I think that there's going to be a lot more of that before we really start getting things pointed in the right direction.
Yeah. I wanted to also, with the election of Cheryl Parker, just like any other neo-lib or Republican in wolf's clothing, we're
Liquor. Not bootlicker.
huh?
You forgot bootlicker.
Sure. We're gonna see over the next 4 years, possibly 8 years, whatever amount of time she managed to maintain her office. Um, you're gonna see a lot of the things like what's happening right now in with the Biden administration, which is Biden just got forced through an investment in the Northeast Corridor. That's the train from Boston to DC. $16.4 billion investment in upgrades and maintenance. This is rather conspicuously similar in dollar amount to the House passing the $14.3 billion aid for Israel without Ukraine aid. And I just got to say, as far as me and my concerns, and a lot of the folks that I know, you're not gonna be able to like give the cookie and then hit us with a stick as a way of and what the reason I bring that up is the Philadelphia Department of the Arts thing, which has finally entered the conversation after this whole quote unquote campaign. And I say quote unquote campaign because Sherelle Parker didn't campaign. Anyway, but it's finally entered the conversation, and it's the cookie that we're trying to get passed for the stick of there's going to be a greater investment in police in Philadelphia. That doesn't do it for me. I don't know who that does it for, but you're not going to be able to go, hey Joe, we did it. We passed 16.4 billion for the Northeast Corridor, and then give Israel 14.3 billion and go, oh no, that's just that's nothing.
Yeah, I got no words. um the so the money for the corridor, the money for rails in general, like our rail system is fucking archaic.
Oh yeah, yeah. Plus, if
Um,
you look at our the the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration, the NHTSA, NTHSA, however the acronym
yeah,
works.
yeah,
The if you look at them, the regulations around train cars are from an era where we didn't know what we know about accidents now.
right,
The regulations are designed around essentially creating train cars that cannot be penetrated, and cannot be destroyed in an accident, instead of being designed with modern engineering to absorb the impact,
right.
and protect the passenger compartment, not the train car itself. Anyway, sorry, go on.
No, no. So in general, like that kind of like capital investment in our railways is useful and wonderful, and we need 10 times as much.
Yeah.
But
That's the part of the cookie and the stick that doesn't do it for me. Like if you're gonna fund the arts in Philadelphia at like I don't know 20% of the budget, and still give the police department 50% of the budget. Okay, I can see an argument for that. Um, but unless half of the budget is going to the arts and humanities, and while you're spending the other half of the budget on this huge department that can't take care of all the things that we task it with because it's so expensive, then you're not doing your job. Similarly,
They're not doing the job they should be doing. But
right.
it's like the system isn't broken. It's working exactly how it was designed, but the design sucks.
Yeah. Yeah, and so sending 16 billion or 14 billion to Israel so they can bomb the shit out of some folks that are brown, uh, and quote unquote protect themselves. I hate to tell you, but and I have a lot of Jewish friends. I don't hate Jewish people, and I'm not an anti-Semite, and I love Judaism and the whole idea of Judaism. I even have a soft spot in my thought process for an Israeli state. But when you bomb the crap out of people, you don't make yourself safer. Just like, if you look at gang violence in the US, if you're in a gang and you shoot up some other gang's turf, you're not making your gang safer. You're starting a turf war. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, no, right, right. And like again, wasn't sure that we were gonna kind of get into this topic, but it's like and like I will say unequivocally, like I hate terrorism because it targets civilians to try to
Yes.
achieve a political or military outcome.
Yes.
Um, at the same time, I also hate apartheid and genocide. And like for whatever people want to say, because you can look at it and say, well, they've been at each other's throats for the last 4,000 years, or you can say, for the last 75 years, um, there's so many different ways that people are looking at the situation, and people are largely um gravitating towards the emotional aspect that suits them best personally, which makes for a really difficult discussion
Right.
because of like again, like I have friends whose like parents were like afraid to die from rockets. Like I have friends who their kid was doing okay, it's time for me to go back to the motherland and visit there. And while they were there, they were rocketed. Like I get it. And I also realize that particularly like when you're a Jew, when there's somebody that says, from the river to the sea, like that saying, we want to eradicate you. And for Jews, saying that we want to wipe you out, that's a trigger. And that's a total understatement. But like, so I get that. What bothers me is that those things and those triggers enable them to completely overlook. Like I was looking at it from 2000 till now, it's approximately a 10-1 kill rate
Yeah.
of Palestinians to Israelis.
Yeah. And
And
that's
it's like,
not and that totally discounts the economic effects, social effects, number of dehomings, etc. Um things that don't show up in a kill rate and are unequal in the whole situation.
and so and unfortunately on the flip side, um like there are definitely people who are like, well, Israel's been doing all of this evil shit, so we're not going to condemn Hamas or
I don't, what's interesting to me. So this came up as a message of political expediency on a couple of interviews. A couple of folks that have been interviewed are like, especially in Europe, the leading question is, do you condemn Hamas? Of especially Palestinians or people representing a pro-Palestinian stance. And I go, and I don't know that. And of course, the answer is yes. I condemn Hamas, but I don't know. I don't know that that's necessary political expediency. A lot of these folks have been condemning Hamas for ages. Even the Palestinians who have a Hamas government were condemning Hamas at the time. They were like, "Yeah, we don't want a Hamas government, but you got guys with guns at our voting booths telling us if we don't vote for them, they're going to kill us right now."
Right. Or which is weird because like Hamas and the Taliban, like there's definitely a mindset um that puts Palestinians, particular Afghans. I just did an amazing show, total plug. Go to Interact and see Selling Kabul. It's an amazing show. I just worked on it, but it's about a translator who's trying to get out of Afghanistan right after we left. And but when you look at those situations and how civilians wind up forced in these corners, it's like,
Your mic is failing.
really? That's weird. Um, it's like, would the Taliban have existed had we not funded the Mujahideen to fight the Russians? It's like, would Hamas be in power had Israel not been um occupying and forcing themselves into Gaza as they had? So it's like, yes, this situation right in front of our noses sucks, but how did we get here? And what were the mistakes made? What were the intentional things that were done? Like, what were those things that got us in this fucked up situation that we're in right now? And political will has less to do with those answers than where people are about the situation and how that a situation affects them immediately and emotionally right now.
Yeah, I've completely lost your mic. It's very weird. Um, at any rate, yes, I think that this ties in with the whole entire point of who do we have here? Oh, you again. It's the same actors over and over. It's the same people. It's the same motivations, and there's a disconnect between what we as people want and how political campaigns are run, and also the information that we have available to us because things are more sensational. Things are easier to get promoted. Things get more ad dollars, more clicks, etc. Um, at any rate, yes, I think we need to start a media company. I'm willing to do that with you. Let's have a meeting about it and get this thing rolling. I'm gonna outro the show since we can't hear
Cool.
you. And I need to get going anyway. I know it's late, and thank you. So thank you for coming on the show. I'd normally offer you last thoughts, but yeah, we're completely
All
losing
good.
your mic. Oh, and you're back a little bit,
Of
but
course, I'm back now. But that, no. Oh well. Oh well. Thanks again. Always cool talking. Let's do it again sometime.
awesome. Thank you to folks who watch the show every week. I really appreciate it. If you watched this long, I really, really appreciate it. We got into a lot of conversation that, wasn't necessarily on the agenda, but I think deserves the agenda. These things are important. It's important to know the people you're voting for, to know what's going on both nationally and internationally. In that effort, please consider subscribing to the Patreon. And at the very least, please like us on social media. Hit the subscribe button on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter or Twitch, whatever Blue Sky we're on now as well. I just realized that I forgot to post the links on those outlets, but I'll do so later today. You can watch this live Wednesday 10 a.m. or you can watch it in replay. If you're just finding us, feel free to take a look at the previously published episodes, and take a look at the discussion we've been having around the Philadelphia election. If you like what you see, even if you don't, if you support, independent journalism, we are a truly independent journalistic, group. The group is small. It's me and my associate producer. And we try and cover things as best we can. We try and provide a voice to those who don't always get a voice. And we try and bring attention to things from a unique perspective so that you can at least have more information than you did before you watch the show. So tune in next week. If you hit like and subscribe on your preferred social media outlet, you'll get a notification when we're planning to go live. And we'll have more shows and information for you as the year progresses. We are going to take a brief break. And have some downtime over the holidays, but we will we will announce when we'll be back and when the new season will start. We'll continue to cover live arts events in Philadelphia. We'll continue to cover current events and news, and we'll continue to cover Philadelphia and politics as well as national and international politics as they apply to us. So tune in again, folks. Appreciate you watching. Enjoy the rest of your week, everybody.